Well, good morning. Good evening, Gloria. How are you?
Good morning to you. It's nearly bedtime here. No.
Are we actually still on the same day? That's my question.
Yeah,
What is
well,
your
I believe so. We're Wednesday, 9th of November, just after 8 p.m.
Okay, no, I'm still in the morning. I'm now 9 a.m. in the morning. Okay. So we're at least on the same day. We're happy about that. It's really good to have you back, and I'm so grateful that you are here. So, how are you? And welcome everybody to Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa, the healing channel where we get to, just invite amazing people like Gloria to come and share with us her journey and her healing. So, how are you? How's it been going in NZ?
Yes, look, really good. Doing some good work over here. We're moving into our summer, so excited about that. Although we've had a little bit of rain and wind, which no one welcomes at this time of year. We're a bit over winter, but yeah. So no, look, it's beautiful, and the sun comes up, and just it's stunning. So. Doing well, Chantelle. Oh, that
New,
reminds
Ze-
rhymes. How
New
are you?
Zealand, yeah, exactly. New Zealand is beautiful, though, I have to say. I mean, it's a lovely. I've never been there. I do still intend going there, though. But it is a really stunning country. I mean, I
Yes.
know when you were filming, was it Lord of the Rings in New Zealand? I mean, that was quite something special,
Oh,
spectacular.
oh,
Yeah.
epic, epic.
Okie dokie. So today we are touching on some really icky topics. Well, not that they're icky, but it's not nice to address things like your shame, grief, and just dealing with feeling different. And I know what we were saying a little bit offhand, sorry, off air beforehand was you obviously being an SRA overcomer yourself understand that feeling of being so disconnected and feeling so different from the rest of the world, right? So I want to touch on that because for me, that hits home. I haven't experienced what you guys have been through, but just the feeling of not fitting into my family, not fitting into my school environment, and not that. And I have to say, when I speak about my family, I want to be clear. I was very loved, um, but because I was a different, I had spiritual gifts. My siblings often didn't understand me, so they teased me, and I reacted all the time. So I became very reactive, you know, and it was almost like you look at me in a certain way, and you may as well be kicking me in the abdomen. So I would react before you could even say something. So, for me, that was my experience. And gosh, that was bad enough. And obviously, being ousted, being told I was a child of the devil and Jesus didn't love me and nonsense like that. So, that for me was a big thing, And honestly, stuff like that, that is not when you're looking at it on the scale of 1 to 10, it would probably be about 2 on the trauma scale, right? Compared to other stuff we're talking about. So, I can imagine if I felt that way what it must be like for someone who has really experienced something so macabre and so disgusting and so inhumane. How must that be when the rest of the world is honoring the teacher or the royals or the government or the whoever or the grandfather or whoever it is that's perpetuating the abuse, right? And I think that in itself must be so separating, so isolating, right?
Yeah, and look, I was going to say the gift and what you I think have shared is the feeling different and feeling so isolated and disconnected from others The gift in that, though, I think, is your intuition. Do you notice that no one needed to actually do anything, Chantelle, to you? You just intuited that look. And I
Yes.
think that kind of can, yeah. So I think we do develop other attributes as well. We learn to quite
So
quickly.
true. So true. So true. And I like what you just said there, because it struck a chord with me. I was always highly intuitive. I mean, I could always see, and I could see things in people's bodies, like energy blockages and stuff like that. So I didn't know that no one else could see it, right? So I
Yeah.
would then be saying this and people would look at me like I'm crazy. And then my mom, eventually she would say, like, look, just, I believe you. We know it's there, but other people can't. They can't see what you see. And then she kind of showed me how to ascertain the difference between what's real and what's energetic. So that's what I had. So I definitely had that, which I was very grateful for. And as you say, just looking and just having someone had look at me in a certain way, I intuitively knew what they were thinking, or what their energy was about. So instead of just ignoring it, though, I would react to it. And
Yeah.
that was what got me into trouble.
Well, I'm
And I'm
suspecting.
still feisty as hell, but I've just learned how to not be as reactive. I see it coming a mile away. Now I laugh. Do you know what I'm saying? It's very different. But it has taken me many years to not be triggered by that.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. So my point is that for someone like me who's not had those traumas, and it's taken me a long time, and doing the spiritual work for many years now, of really understanding those triggers, and I can well understand that for someone who has never had that and has just experienced trauma from those that they love and trust, is very damaging.
Yeah, and 100%. And I think what you're saying resonates, because for survivors of child sexual abuse, that feeling different is, to my mind, in the top 10. And it's in the top 10 of symptoms we experience, because we become hypervigilant, and we become hypervigilant because we're trying to keep safe. So whereas you might see a group of children playing, they're contemplating their next move in the game, or where they're going to sit, or who they're going to, which team they want to be in. For survivors like me and others, we're just thinking, where's the safest spot for us? How can we feel part of something when we feel so different from everyone else? And instead of naturally feeling we belong, we try to make ourselves belong, because we're not
Yes.
feeling it. Now, we
And you
don't
don't
have,
know who you are, right? So
we,
it's that, especially when you've had so many, um, the disassociation is such a prevalent thing when someone who's had that kind of abuse. So you don't really, I mean, this is just my opinion and my understanding on it. You really don't know who you are, because you've had to play so many roles and have so many masks on at so many different times, that I think the first thing would be, who the hell am I, right?
yeah. Will the real Gloria Masters please stand
Yes.
up?
Yeah.
Where Look, the point, and 100%, I think as children, we don't even get the luxury of following that train of thought, Chantelle. As children, we are in survival mode. So this feeling different is just who we are, and we don't understand it, and we don't necessarily have languaging around it. I think, to be fair, it's not until we're adults that we recognize not only that we were feeling different, but that's why. Because we
Yeah.
were experiencing abuse, for some of us on a daily basis. For others, it may have been a one-off or an occasional. it doesn't matter. The point is it still isolates us from others who have safe, loving, nurturing homes. So how do you go from feeling different to feeling part of without putting on that mask, as you say, or without bringing a version of self to the game?
Absolutely. That must be so scary, because that part of you has never been accepted or loved or appreciated. It's always been split into something else, another version of itself, right? So there would then be a whole lot of me's. And I think that's obviously, when we're looking at the dissociation, not disassociation. I was corrected the last time by reviewer as well.
Yes, apparently it's two different versions. So you could be right with either. You just keep that extra syllable. I'm with you.
Yeah, exactly. Very interesting, though. So, what would you say to people, and especially the overcomers and the survivors, about this? Like, how do you learn after something like that to actually feel like you? And I hate that word, fit into society, because I just don't like fitting into society anyway. But it's like, feel like you are part of something. I think that's really what it is, that you're part of something, that you can trust, that you can smile, you can love. You know what I'm saying? I think that would be something very important for someone to look.
Yeah, and I think you raise a really good point. You had the luxury, when I say you, I mean generic you,
Yeah.
had the luxury of choice.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to fit in, you could. If you didn't have to. We never had the choice. The choice was taken from us the moment the abuse occurred. Yeah. We were put into the realm of othered. We were othered. We could not, no part of us psychologically could feel connected to or the same as. And what do kids and teenagers want, Chantelle? They want to look exactly the same and behave in the same way.
Yes.
That wasn't available to us. So what we had to do was climb Mount Everest, in a manner of speaking, to find that false part of ourselves that could belong. But we were desperate to belong, you see. It's just that choice had been taken. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What did you do specifically aimed at this issue to help yourself?
Yeah, and it's a really good point. And at times in my recovery and healing today, there'll still be times where I feel different from. And I have to work very hard to not stay in other lane and to join the masses. Now, it's much more of a choice for me, of course, as an adult. But what I did was I had to recognize first that I was fragmented, because kind of my
Just carry on talking. A dove has just flown into my kitchen. So please carry on talking.
Because of the abuse I suffered, Chantelle, I had to find a way to connect with who I was. I was so fragmented, and parts of my personality were all over the place. So my first kind of step one for me was to try and integrate and bring all those fragmented parts into who I was. And that was step one for me. And then once I'd been able to do that, then I could look at what was stopping me from becoming part of or feeling part of something. And I realized I needed to find my voice, and I needed to find my voice so that I could contribute, because otherwise I was still being this person that only talked about acceptable things. and my life had been anything other than acceptable. So because I was so desperate to feel normal, we don't feel normal. Because I was so desperate, I had to do the healing, and it was painful and it was hard, but I managed to find a way by being authentic. And now I can say I am my authentic self. Does everybody like that? Not really, but I do.
Exactly. And that's what matters, right? Because at the end of the day, when you can't be your authentic self, you're going to try and be a lot of things for a whole lot of people, which is exhausting. And that's when we actually break our spirits, really, by not knowing who we are or what we should be doing. It's that whole connection back to spirit that gives you your strength, that inner power. And from that place, you can create a different experience in life, right?
I agree. And I think, again, because that choice had been taken from me and from other survivors watching your show, they will completely connect. And you mentioned it earlier, Chantelle, who I wasn't acceptable to either parent. So in what realm or what fantasy land was it ever likely I could accept me?
Yeah,
If the two
absolutely.
people that were tasked with loving me and looking at me could only accept a version of me, in my father's case, the best sex-exploited, abused child sex worker who could make him enormous amounts of money, and in my mother's a really complex narcissist who she would give me attention if I looked after her. Notice that the whole parentified child is on its head. I'm the child doing the parenting. So there was no way I could feel normal. I'd go to a friend's house after school. Occasionally, I'd be in shock because the child was loved, had food prepared and given, and was encouraged to relax and play. Wow.
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 Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, the feeling different was a hangover for me that took a lot of years. And as I said earlier, step one for me was gathering up the fragmented parts that had been scattered all over the universe in my psyche and gathering them in slowly and honoring self. So once I knew who I was, I could then own who I was and bring that forward, that Gloria forward.
And
Yeah.
I'm thinking that would have maybe then would have been when you were able to start the process of forgiveness, right? Once you'd gathered those fragmented bits of yourself, you could then able to start the healing process would then be the journey of forgiveness. Is that right for you?
Well, I'd like to say it was, but I'm the queen of resistance. So I was not going to even look at forgiveness or consider it, Chantelle. And it was, a very hard, painful, slow journey for me because it wasn't that the fragmented parts of myself and finding who I was then led to forgiveness. Oh no, I took great delight in hating and resenting. But guess what I discovered in the end? It was only hurting me. So
Exactly. There's
yeah.
that beautiful saying that says anger is like holding onto a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone. The only one that's getting burnt is you. And we
Yes.
can look at any negative emotion in that way. I'm interested to find out from you though, because especially you that has had two parents that have pretty much been your abusers as well. Um, I know a lot of SRA overcomers have had a similar thing, or maybe one parent has been oblivious to these atrocities. How on earth did you individually even begin? And I'm going to ask you first to start with your dad. How on earth were you able to forgive your father after what had gone down with you and what he perpetrated on you as a very, very innocent? I'd be interested to hear that, because that is a big one. I mean, not just physically, but just the betrayal, the betrayal of this ongoing. I mean, yes, the archetype of our father is to provide and protect and to hunt and gather, right? And when that is shattered, not just oh, he's an alcoholic and couldn't provide for us, but going to the extremes of consciously abusing you, torturing you. It's very hard not to take that personally. We say
Well,
don't take things personally. It's very hard not to.
well, of course, and this was not just SRA. This was 16 years of targeted physical, sexual, psychological abuse and torture. So, being chained up, being leased out to gangs, being being made to star in over 100 pornographic movies, having abortions forced on me at my grandmother's hands, or there's layers upon layers upon layers of the abuse, which I'm a miracle. I'm lucky to be here, and I'm grateful I am. So it wasn't a simple thing for me to forgive. And I just want to give a disclaimer for the beautiful survivors who have experienced anything in terms of child sexual abuse. There is no right or wrong in this. We forgive when and only if it's right for us to do so. And for me, Chantelle, it took years. I spent decades hating him and feeling quite proud of the fact that I did. I was the queen of resistance and resentment and anger. I was disgusted and appalled, and I hated him deeply. And then as I got further through the healing journey, I realized it was a bit of a light bulb moment, actually, that he wasn't aware. He wasn't aware of how I felt because I had no relationship with him from the time I was 16 years old. So it was only me this was hurting.
What
And
gave you that light bulb moment? At what point did you make that shift to realize, oh my gosh, I am the one being hurt here with my thoughts?
because whenever I would see well-meaning friends who loved me, that would be my topic. And one of them very gently said to me one day, do you think you'll ever be able to move on from hating him so much? And she said it with love, Chantelle. It wasn't an unkind, judgy thing. But it gave me pause. And then I realized my energy and my psychological and spiritual energy is going to hating. And it took me a while after that, but it was a process for me. But I did forgive. And you know what? I don't know if I ever told you this, but there was never one time in my whole 16 years with that man that we ever had a conversation where he was a father to me. He never once discussed schoolwork or sport I loved or boys I might have liked or anything. The only time my father ever communicated with me was to try and perfect my sex working techniques, so he could earn more money. So yes, I've forgiven him. I
Um,
know. I know.
I'm trying, yeah. I'm trying, yeah. I'm trying really hard to imagine what that must be like.
It
I'm
was.
very happy. Yeah, I'm very happy. I can't imagine it. I'm not going to lie about that. But it's like, let me ask you this, and I think I'm so curious because it's so hard, and I know because I have so many emails from our viewers and stuff over the time as well, really, asking and just expressing such horror at what they hear on our platforms.
Sure.
It's like, was he ever a nice guy to you?
I think we need to contextualize. I'm not trying to be difficult.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because some of these guys are such Jekyll and Hyde. So I'm like wondering, in your situation, when you experienced that with him, what was that like on a daily basis?
Horror. I was terrified. I was terrified all of the time because this was a psychopath, but he was a twisted, deranged psychopath. So I never knew at what point I'd be dragged by my hair out to the van and thrown in the van. It could be the middle of the night, Chantelle, taken to somewhere to be trafficked. I never knew what was coming. So nice occasionally. Someone might say, oh, she did really well, and he might give me, back in those days, 10 cents for an ice cream. But again, we never had what you had with your dad. We never had a conversation ever. I never felt protected by him. I never felt loved by him. I never felt anything other than I was there to serve his purpose. What rugby, and it's big in South Africa, yeah.
Oh yeah, we know
Yeah.
all about you Kiwis. David
Like,
Campese is the hottest fullback New Zealand ever saw.
well, in my
We all know David Campese.
in my case with rugby, I will never be able to watch it in my life because what my father would do would make me kneel like a table naked during the 90-minute rugby games, and I would be a tabletop for his beer, for his food, and he would abuse me and assault me during the game. So I can't ever willingly attend a rugby match. So I guess what I'm saying is the layers go deep, and it's been very big for me to forgive. But as I say, I had to in a way because then I became freer of,
Yes,
because it's like demonic energy. We're talking about a twisted psychopath, and I was left in his care. So forgiveness is multi-layered and very complex, and I get really cross with people and religious institutes and well-meaning therapists that say you need to forgive. My response begins with F and ends with off. Don't ever tell a survivor what they should or shouldn't do. We never had a choice. Survivors must be given choices always.
absolutely,
Always. That's
absolutely,
yeah. But
absolutely.
anyway, you weren't expecting that as a long-winded answer, were you?
No, but you know what? I think it's so important because it's as you're saying, and I know we're going to be discussing things like this in future as well, and we have discussed it in the past. So I know this kind of came in unexpectedly as well because it's just really when you were saying that you realized, when you started bringing all the fragments of yourself together little bit by little bit, And I would imagine only once you've done that could you even begin to look at the idea of forgiveness. As you say, don't you dare tell me to forgive that piece of scum. It's like you did not experience what I experienced. So I understand that that is such a sensitive thing. And really, the survivors and overcomers absolutely need to be treated with such tenderness as far as that's concerned, which is why I'm unpacking that with you right now.
Yes.
Because and I know I've another one of the survivors that I've spoken to from Australia, Ash, who also had this horrific sexually sadistic psychopathic father. I mean, the stories that beautiful human has shared on this platform as well around that is on another level. And also, yet there is Ash and has really just let go and living his best life. And I see, someone like yourself who's gone through these horrors with your dad, yet, and again, that's why I say on the scale of 1 to 10, that is a 30 out of 10 trauma, right? The average person maybe has a 2 or a 3 trauma. My dad wasn't there. He traveled a lot. He just bought us off with money, or he had affairs, or whatever the case might be. So that kind of forgiveness is bad enough, right? So I guess it's understanding when you've been in that situation to unpack it and to really get to the point of letting go and moving forward and realizing in every cell of your being that that person is not your father. He is a very sick human who's been taken over by some twisted, demonic, very contorted force. It doesn't mean he shouldn't take responsibility, because ultimately he's doing it. So that part of him is still active and willing and whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, it's very difficult to make that connection. And I think that's what it is. To be able to forgive your parents for these atrocities has got to be the biggest step forward. And really, I think, very difficult.
Yeah, and look, again, I think, and thank you, because I think it's quite a complex one for survivors, actually. And, shoulda, woulda, coulda creeps in there. But at the end of the day, it's what you said at the beginning, Chantelle. I think if people can trust their intuition and their instinct, if we go within, we're always guided.
Yeah,
And I think trusting
absolutely.
that instinct is the light. It's the way through. So, for me, yes, it took a lot of courage and a lot of tenacity actually to reach the place of forgiveness. But when I did, I just felt free. I felt
Mm,
free of those tentacles,
mm,
because layers upon layers of memory and recall and horror, when I could finally see it clearly for what it all was, it threatened to break me in its path. I used to dream at night and have tsunamis coming at me, and that's how big this was. So I'm so grateful to have made my way through, and I'm here for a reason. I had
absolutely.
one therapist say to me, "Do you really think you went through all of that to do nothing with it?"
Exactly.
Yeah, that's my gift,
Exactly.
to help.
And
Yeah.
your mum, I mean, how did you process? Because again, I'd say it's a different relationship, often with your mum. I mean, really, as a fetus, you grow inside of her, you connected to her via the umbilical cord. That's your protection. And obviously to come out of that and straight into the claws of the predators, and her being this narcissist as well. How was that for you dealing with her?
Well, it's interesting because it was only in the writing of my memoir that I connected a few dots, Chantelle, and she was just as culpable and she enabled a lot of that and was a gatekeeper for a lot of it too. And by that I mean she would knowingly leave me there, and would, if you said to me, what was one thing you could remember from your childhood, one theme through my childhood around my mother were these words: I was always in the way. That's how my mother saw me. So I was nothing to her. When you're a wounded narcissist or a complex narcissist, people are objects. So I was an object to her. If I could perform for her by bringing her food or a cup of tea or running up to the local shop for her, then I might get a thank you or you're a good girl. Other than that, I was in the way. So I didn't really have a mother who loved me. I don't believe I was actually loved by either parent. Does that make sense? There was no
Yes.
There was no interest in me at all. And
Yes.
yeah.
I think it is. She must have been so damaged herself, and no doubt probably taking abuse from your father as well. Yeah, I would have imagined that would have been part of the cycle there.
Yeah.
So
to forgive her as well. Now, forgiveness though doesn't mean I have a relationship with her and she's still alive. I can't have a relationship with her because it's too toxic for me.
Mm-hmm.
The only relationship I can have with her, which has been laid down by her and it's been broken 4 times in my life, is this: she will accept me in her life and within the extended family's lives on the following conditions: that I never ever speak of my childhood abuse again, and that I stop making stuff up.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing.
No, but it's...
Stop making this up, Gloria. Just stop it now.
Can't you see you've got a big fat liar in front of you, Chantelle?
I'm sorry. I know my life. It's like that you stop making this stuff up now, because at the end of the day, it's like, wow. Does she honestly and truly believe that this did not happen? Has she been, or is she really, I mean, is she that damaged that she truly believes it didn't happen?
No, well, okay, let me ask you and your audience this. The first person I went to was my mother when I started the recall in my 30s, yeah? And I went to her and I said, Mum, I've been really badly sexually abused, and it's started with my father, right? And this is her response: you have no right to ever speak of this again. So you tell me, is that the normal response from a loving mother?
Okay. I mean, there you go. Now again, I mean, I understand, and I want you to, and I'm asking you this specifically because I think those of us who have loving parents, or at least one loving parent, that must be so hard to hear, because I can't imagine my mother ever saying that. She lives for her kids, and her grandkids and her great grandkids. So it's very difficult to imagine that a mother would be that way. But I guess, because I'm really asking in terms of forgiveness, because these are such big things, in my opinion, to forgive. They really, really are for children, But I guess one gets to a stage where you don't expect anything else, right? As a child, this just becomes your norm.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think too, and I'm sort of laughing with you here, I think too that, but I just need to qualify this a little. I would try and have a relationship with my mother, because who doesn't want a mother in their lives? But each time I would try and reconnect with her, I had to cut off the part of myself that was unacceptable, which is my truth, which is who I am, which is my story, which is my first 16 years. So can you imagine trying to limp through a relationship with your mother, the one person in the world that's meant to love and support and stand by you, knowing that you can never be your authentic self?
No, I can't imagine that. And I'm just seeing one of the comments from one of our viewers here as well. She says, my mother said the same thing to me. Stop making things up, or you obviously brought this on yourself. Thanks for that, Alice. I mean, like, okay. So, how did you, I'm like, how do I even ask the question? It's such a far-fetched thing for me. How did you get to the point of also understanding your mom and being able to forgive her for what she enabled?
Oh, I might need a bottle of wine with that one. Well,
We're doing virtual wine here, guys. Get your glasses. Okay, it's 10 o'clock in the morning here, but hey, we're partying. We like our New Zealand counterparts.
That was a whole world of pain, because I'm a mother. And, you know, for your beautiful audience, those of us who are parents understand that you would do anything for your child or children. That's just a no-brainer. So to have someone who would willingly not stand for you or step in front of that truck was a shock to me. And it was in the writing of the book, the memoir, actually, that I was able to make sense or connect a few dots. And I realized my mother's been enabling this and by shutting me down. So that's why I said to you at the beginning, she was incredibly poisonous, because no one expected that from her. You know, people in our world find or have an expectation of mothers. And so forgiveness for me, I had to do it, but I lost all respect. Can I say that? And there's no respect. And I don't need to see her again, because I cannot. It's damaging for me to be in her presence, Chantelle.
I can well imagine that, because, I mean, it's, yeah, especially when there's absolutely no accountability whatsoever. So what did it feel like when you were finally able to let that go? And at what moment did you realize you were able to let that go? Both your parents.
My father, isn't it funny? My father was the one that nearly killed me.
When you say nearly killed me, what do you mean?
He would go into psychotic rages and strangle me. He would tie me up outside and leave me there for days. He tried to run me over in the car several times. It was, you know, deliberate, cruel, vicious acts, to the point where I thought I would die. And in fact, 3 times during my adolescence, I tried to take my own life, because I didn't have either parent who were prepared to look out for me, and I was struggling with the enormity of everything. So my father was easier to forgive. Having said all that, he was actually easier to forgive, because it was out there, it was violent, it was physical, but there weren't surprises, because I knew to expect the worst. Yeah. With my mother, the reason I found it harder to forgive her was because there was a level of manipulation and sneakiness underneath it all. So to the world, she was this wonderful person. To me, she was a neglectful, abandoning, cruel woman.
Absolutely. What was her background, though?
Well, interesting you say that, because she was the eldest of 4 children and was sent away at the age of 3 to live with her grandmother, who was very Victorian era-ish and strict, and children are to be seen and not heard and have no needs. So she was very neglected emotionally by her grandmother and was not allowed back in her mother's home until she was 12. So she didn't know how to nurture. She'd never been nurtured. So I feel sad for her that she never had that experience. But not sad enough that I didn't still feel very neglected and abandoned and broken by her, because there's a myth that mothers will protect and love and not abuse. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
layers upon layers, baby.
But I'm loving that, Naz. I mean, and I really think, although our talk today was going to be taken on a different direction, I've actually rechanged to forgiving your parents after satanic ritual abuse, because I think that is a really, really important one to even look at. Because for someone, as I said, I can only compare my life experience to what I've experienced. For parents to have our parents both in the system, or at least one, and the other one being abused, and there's absolutely no protection for the children in the home. Everyone, your teachers are involved, your school somehow is involved, your family is not helping, some of them are involved. There is no safe place for a child in that environment. Absolutely none. So to have that start to life where there is no safe environment already sets you back 80%. I would say at least 80% in life, because you're now fully operating from a place of fear. And when you're fully operating from a place of fear, you're going to be attracting exactly all of that in your life, right? So more experiences that match them, or the things you fear, because that's the way that energy works. It really, really does. And it is it is so beautiful to see you rise above that against all odds. I have to tell you, these are incredible stories for me to hear, because as human beings, these are the most important wars and battles we are going to ever have to face. Is the one that you're talking about now, Gloria, is the one you got to conquer within yourself, is the one that you absolutely know. As I said, to have parents who've done that, and you've got to come out and be a normal human being and loving and caring and kind, is almost impossible for the average person. So this is why I so value you and what you've done. And I must say, others like you as well. I mean, everyone on this channel knows I interview people like Jessie Zabota, who has also gone through that huge journey of forgiveness. Lots of Andy Bond from America as well, a Cherokee survivor. I mean, what these girls, not girls, everyone, men and women have been through.
Yeah.
And living to tell the story. This is bravery. There is no Purple Heart for this, or whatever it is that they give the guys on the. This is the true winning of the war, is when you can overcome these battles, because this is what is going to open this planet to healing. People like yourself, that's for sure.
Well, it's interesting you say that, and there's a couple of things. I did have one safe place, and that was school. At school, I had no one abusing me. So I was a terrorist. I was out of control because I was free to be me. So I'd run around causing trouble, stealing children's lunches, always in trouble. because A, meant I could eat something, but B, it also meant I didn't have to look behind me all the time. I could just be a kid. So I was out of control, but I was free at school. I loved school, never wanted to go home. And secondly, I just want to share this because I think this may
Just talk. Sorry, I've got a dove in my kitchen again.
this may inspire your listeners as well. Over 70% of PTSD, or complex post-traumatic stress disordered people, are people like me or people like you who have experienced and survived child sexual abuse. There's a myth out there that it is actually our war vets or Vietnam vets who are the biggest group impacted by this PTSD. Wrong. It's us. Now, let me just highlight a few differences. As a war vet, they come home from war, they get medals, they have awards, they get to walk down the main street of their town. They then get acknowledged and benefits for the rest of their lives and are asked to speak at events. Compare that with us as survivors, and we get nil, nada, zero, noit, nothing. We get basically told, please shut up, please go away. Just thought I'd share that.
And isn't it crazy? Jessie Zabotar pointed something out the other day, which was so scary and so true. We're talking about, obviously all the sorcery and the training, this metaphysical witchcraft training, if you want to call it that very many people are
Mind
these
control.
elites.
Yeah.
Yes, and the bloodline that get taken in and they become these high-level witches and warlocks type thing, okay? And she pointed out very correctly, the same people who are training the witches and warlocks are training your sons and daughter in the military. Now, how about we look at that? We take away, when we look at that, we take judgment away. Because I want to say as well that even the most horrific perpetrators on the planet at this point in time, and the way we understand how the system works, have at some point been innocent children, and at some point also had to go through what a lot of the victim, they themselves are victims of their circumstances, right? Absolutely. So it's very interesting that when we look at that, there's really one evil force that controls the planet right now. And that evil force is split into so many different splits, if you will. Secret societies, churches, the yoga, I mean, everyone who knows me knows I'm a yogi. The yoga, the Eastern philosophies, the Eastern teachings, everything has been infiltrated. Everything. So it's really beautiful when we can hear these stories from yourself and see what survivors, what strength lies within you and is within you. And to know that whether you are a victim or a villain of these things, if you're a villain, you've been a victim. And, there's really just understanding for a moment what that is, just to sit and know that you are created from the greatest light that ever existed, from God's best grace ever. And when we remember that in everyone, we can then start seeing the wounds, and the wounds within ourselves are really the wounds everyone has to varying degrees.
Yeah.
So let's begin by healing ourselves. Everyone has their story to tell. Everyone has their pain. We don't know what the person next to us has been through. As you say, a child like yourself playing up at school, running around being crazy and probably just, as you say, loving being free. Now, anyone who doesn't know anything would see that as, oh my God, look at this unruly child. She needs Ritalin and she needs a psychologist. Meanwhile, these atrocities are happening at home, right? So it's amazing. It's really good. And I'm so grateful for you sharing your story, Gloria. All of us, I mean, if you can forgive what you've forgiven and being able to heal from it and know that you are more important than that pain. It's more important for you to be happy and live your life than what it is to hang on to that and chew on that is very, very special and takes a lot of courage. And as you say, the vets and the whatever it is, the SEALs and whatever these guys are, they get their medals. I mean, yeah, they have shit things happening to them as well. That's for sure. But they come back and they have a medal. They've got pride. On the other hand,
and they do, and full credit and respect. But keep in mind, they were trained as men. As just children, we weren't trained. This just happened to us. So, you know, I find it quite an interesting comparison. I guess the other thing I want to say is for my father and mother, you know, I feel sad for them. Look at what they've missed out on.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel sad for them. They missed out on me. They missed out on the beautiful child I was and the person that I became because of their actions. So I actually feel sorry for them.
Me too. Yeah. And I really hope that, you know, at some point they find their peace as well.
Well, my father's passed, my mother's still around, but that doesn't mean I need to have a relationship. As I say, it's too toxic for me. But I wish her well, and maybe once, maybe when the class is over, she might come for a visit.
We can but hope and pray. Miracles are the order of the day, right? Anyway. Gloria, we're out of time, and I want to just say to you, thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really appreciate your being here. We'll have you back in a couple of weeks again. So to all our viewers out there, just stay tuned. Very important conversations. I love these stories from our overcomers and our survivors that have really, literally been to hell and back and find their way into just this beautiful light. Brave, strong, courageous. Thank you. Thank you,
Chantelle.
Take good care. God bless everyone. If you haven't already, please give us a like, a share, subscribe. This is really important information to share, so please just share. Take good care, guys. We'll see you later on with Jessie. Jessie's a boater. Cool. Take good care. Bye.